Page 76. 22 hours and 42 minutes until shutdown. I remember at the bottom of 75, they had just detonated the explosion. The Hex 13 exploded with a tremendous boom. The floor trembled as a sound and shockwave expanded from the lobby. Even where Ash and Isabel had taken cover, up to 2 flights of stairs and all the way to the end of the corridor, something in the air changed. The oxygen was drawn away, making it impossible to breathe. And then it was sucked back in a blast of warm, scorched gases. A sharp pain stabbed through Ash's head as it was filled with the sound of the explosion. But in an instant, everything went blank, and he could hear nothing at all. At his feet, the fluorescent lamp wobbled and toppled over. Dust filled his nostrils and coated his mouth. He doubled up, pressing his forehead to the ground. He had tried to push the sound away as he had managed to push away the smell of the blood, but he had failed. The noise of the explosion had been too much for his heightened senses. It was as if his skull were being crushed in a vice. He didn't care about anything now, couldn't think about Mom or Isabel. It didn't matter that Thorn was coming, or that Pierce and Kane might escape with Kronos. In that moment, right then, Ash wanted nothing more than to die. He felt Isabel put an arm around his shoulder and hold him, leaning her head against his and giving him a gentle shake. Ash remained still, face contorted, as the pain began to subside. Isabel shook him again, making him turn to look at her, and he realized she was speaking to him. He watched her, seeing her lips move, but hearing nothing. Instead, he felt a cold fear wash over him. Goosebumps tingled down his back and across his scalp, popping to the surface of his skin like little tiny explosions. He couldn't hear. In a panic, he put his fingers into his ears and waggled them. Isabel spoke again, deep concern in her expression, as Ash took his fingers from his ears and looked at the blood smeared across them. "I can't hear." He held his hands out for Isabel to see. "I can't hear." Isabel slung the satchel over her back, grabbed the light, and took hold of Ash, pulling him along the corridor. Ash stumbled along behind her in a daze, shaking his head, trying to banish the pain from his ears. His joints hurt too, and his muscles were aching, but as they moved along the corridor, he began to feel better, and by the time they pushed through the doors at the end of the passage, he actually felt strong. The pain in his head had faded to a dull throb, and his joints felt smooth and efficient, but his hearing was still shot. The world was silent and dead around them. So we're going to skip to page 84. What we're missing is just Ash and Isabel go back to the lobby. Ash ties boards to his feet as shoes, and he goes across the glass and all the wooden pieces that are in the lobby. They make it out of the biosphere between large pieces of glass falling from the ceiling. And on page 84, we are at 22 hours and 2 minutes until shutdown. Ash stared up, seeing not darkness and not blank walls of the research facility, but the expanse of the huge blue midday sky, dotted here and there with only the slightest wisp of cloud. He saw the endless greens of the trees that smelled the life around him, but couldn't enjoy any of it because his shoulders were aching from the fall, and his foot was in agony from the cuts. "Incredible," Isabel said. "You move so fast. How did you do that? I've never seen... Madre de Dios, you're bleeding." Ash sat up and squinted against the sun to see her. "Are you okay?" "I think so." "You can hear me?" Ash looked at Isabel and blinked in surprise. "Yeah, I can. That's weird. I can hear fine." "And you move so fast. How did you do that?" "I don't know. It doesn't make sense. A few minutes ago, I was deaf, and now..." Ash turned his head this way and that, listening to the surroundings, picking up the chirrup of insects, the birds in the canopy, the distant grunt of something hiding in the forest. If anything, his hearing was even better than before. He could pinpoint a sound and focus on it with more control and less effort. He sat up farther and grabbed his foot, holding it with both hands and twisting so he could see the sole. There was blood all over, and when he wiped it away, more oozed from several large cuts. Sorry, Colin. It looks bad, Isabel said. Can you walk? Ash winced as he picked out the glass. It hurt like crazy, but he didn't want to tell Isabel that. She was tough, and he wanted to be tough too. I'll be fine. He removed the binding from his other foot and stood up. Pain shot through him in sickening waves. Trying to take his mind off it, he looked at the helicopter lying crumpled up at the far edge of the clearing. We should check that out. I think they didn't survive. Isabel turned away, not wanting to see the broken vehicle. You don't know that. They might have survived. And if we're going to catch Kane and Pierce, we'll need some help. Maybe they've got supplies we can use. You know, a first aid kit or something. All around, the forest was alive with alien sounds, whistles and calls, and creaks and chirps. The whole place hummed as if it was singing its own song. There were movement, too. Everywhere Ash looked, there was something to draw his eye, and he had to control it the way he controlled what he listened to and what he could smell. It was as if he had learned to use his senses in a different way, trying not to be distracted by everything. Limping closer to the helicopter, he sniffed the air, tasting aviation fuel, burning electronics, and everything beneath it. He allowed himself to hear the gentle sounds of ticking, the quiet groan of metal expanding and settling into place under the heat of the sun. It didn't catch fire, he said. Maybe they got out. Every helicopter he'd ever seen crash in a film had exploded in a ball of fire. So maybe this crash hadn't been so bad. Maybe the pilot had escaped. All right, so we're going to skip over to the next place, the next page, page 87. Isabel is asking if things are working. Ash shakes his head. And the radio? He shook his head again. We must go after them ourselves, yes? Yes. Ash walked away from the useless helicopter. The pain in his foot was subsiding, weakening to a dull throb. No one to help us? Isabel said. No one to help us, he agreed. I've been in there many times, Isabel said. The jungle, with Papa, and sometimes on my own. It is very dangerous, but I know the island. We will reach the boat and we will get the cure. First, we need to be, preparado. Prepared? Si. We go to my house first, quickly. From behind, Ash heard a muffled crump, and he looked back at the hole in the biosphere they had emerged from a few minutes ago. I don't hear so good as you. I think it's Thorn. He must have gotten the Hex 13, figured out how to use it. He's coming. Then we must get what we need and go, Isabel replied. We'll lose him in the jungle.